Welcome to the Attractions Group Podcast, episode number 27. I'm Don Helbig alongside Ryan Suhr. Be sure to follow us on our channels, YouTube, the podcast apps, your favorite podcast apps, and also follow us on Twitter. It is attractions underscore GRP. Ryan, how you doing?
I'm doing awesome. How are you doing?
Doing all right. You know, it's hard to believe that as we record here, we're already in the middle of January.
Yeah, absolutely. Dude, time flies so much. Don, this is going to be a weird segue, but do you remember when you first met me? Like in
I do.
2005 or 6? So
I
that was
do.
2005 or 6. So I was 24 years old, okay? Next Wednesday, I turned 40. How do you feel about that?
All right.
Because I don't feel great about it.
Well, you know what? Let me put it this way to you. 40 is going to be a tough decade because that's when things start hitting you a little bit.
Right.
But once you get past 45 or whatever, it's just a number and it doesn't matter anymore. I mean, for me, my hardest time was when I hit 30.
Yeah, 30
You
was
know,
kind of rough, but
not necessarily 40, but like 30 was like, oh wow. I'm not I'm not considered some young person anymore. Now you're kind of an adult. You're getting close to the middle age and those kind of things.
right?
So I wouldn't put any I wouldn't worry about it. It's just a number, Ryan, and it's really just how you feel, and you're as young as you want to feel. And as long as you stay active, it's just a number with age.
I agree, and honestly, I do have the advantage of, a lot of people see me and they find out I'm 39. They're like, "Oh my god, I thought you were like 29, 30, maybe at the most." So I look young for those of you who are not watching on YouTube, even though you probably should be. Um,
That's why I keep my head shaved because it looks younger. At the Bengals game the other day, a group that I was with, they were asking, everyone's giving out their age and everything. When I kind of shared mine with them, they were all like, "You got to be kidding me!" And they all had me like 10, 12 years younger, which made
yeah,
me feel really good.
that means you win.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
age is just a number, but you know what? So is 21, and that's won me a lot of money in the past.
And there's going to be advantages for you coming up. You're going to be able to get those discounts at places like Denny's and Perkins and Bob Evans and all that. So you're going to love it as you get older.
Yeah, I understand that, but of course, as soon as I start getting up closer to what is it, 65, where you get the discounted Denny's, they close the one near King's Dominion. So
Yeah.
so I guess like there's no reason to get older anymore. Don, what are we talking about today?
Well, Ryan, it's the busy season for a lot of seasonal parks throughout the country. Not because the parks are open, but it's the hiring season, and depending on the park, there's going to be maybe hundreds of openings to thousands of openings. So now is a time that they're preparing for the upcoming season that opens in the spring, and they're looking to fill all of these different positions.
Yeah, the number is always staggering. I always see the press releases of Kings Island's looking to fill 6,000 positions. It's like I don't know. I don't think I've passed 6,000 people in the last year. To think you hire all those people, and by you I mean every park, because
Yeah, I
even
mean it's substantial and what you need. And today, with the way that the high school and the college students and that are, they want to be able to take like summer vacations and do those kind of things, or
yeah,
have some time off to do things with their friends. So you need a deeper pool of associates, and so like I said, it's anywhere from into the hundreds, into the thousands that parks need all throughout the country. So if you're interested in working in the industry, now's the time to get on the websites of the parks in your area, see what opportunities are available. We're not just talking for high school and college students, but also maybe you're an adult that wants to supplement your income, you're a retiree. But go on those websites, look at what's available. There's sure to be a job that interests you
hmm
if you have the time. If you need a seasonal job or you just want to supplement, there's going to be a job for you.
yeah, I agree. And a lot of it is different personalities have different jobs because this is gonna you want to make it a fun job pretty much no matter what. So if you're like outgoing and stuff, and you just really enjoy people, and especially if you're passionate in the industry, I mean, you could always work in rides. The thing that at least Cedar Fair does that I would do if I worked there is the park ambassador. I think that's really cool, where you're just knowledgeable about the park. You walk around, you help people out. Hey, you're having a bad day. Let's make it better. That sort of thing. I think that's really cool. I know that you've got to like earn your way into it. But that's something that like if I could choose like just some random seasonal thing that within operations or whatever department it's under, that's probably what I would do. But also, there's a lot of stuff where um Like, there's, like, I know, a lot of parks are cashless, but a lot of parks have money rooms and stuff too, where
Mm.
if you just wanna count money all day. I used to work for a bank and do that. But
Yeah, I mean, if you're a numbers person, financial background in that, I mean, you go on to these websites, you look at the jobs, I mean, it relates to basically any field that's out there.
yeah, I agree. Um, so, we're a lot of people, when we talk about opportunities and stuff, and you and I have had this discussion, obviously off camera, but, um, a large number of the full-time staff, started out as seasonal. You didn't do that route. You took a different route, but a lot do. So, top of your head, in your experience, what percentage of full-time employees, and we're talking about management level, not like year-round ride ops, but like career employees started as seasonal? What percentage would you pin that at if you had to?
I would say you're gonna be over 70%, particularly when you look at a lot of the different departments that there are, and that skill set can really only be acquired by working in the industry. So that's going to drive that number up a little bit. I would say about, across the board, we're talking about coast to coast, east, west, north, south, all that. You're looking at about 70% of Parks full-time staff would have started out seasonally.
So, in the scheme of, being seasonal, a lot of people start, as ride ops or sweeping the midways or whatever, and then work their way up into marketing, finance, and so on. What are some of the skills that being a seasonal employee, what does that bring to the table that managers and directors are looking for when hiring full-time staff?
Well, I think it's what you're going to learn, being out in the park, and that I think there's, basically three essential skills that you have to have, that you're going to be taught and developed while you're working seasonally, that would help you in those full-time roles that you're going to need in those full-time kind of roles. That would be communication skills, very important, interpersonal skills, and you also have to develop a work ethic. This is not an industry where you can come in one day and just say, I don't feel like it. I mean, you have to be ready to go. You have to bring your A game, every day. Be the best that you can be every day. And I think that's what you would learn in those seasonal positions is how to put all of that together, and that becomes part of who you are, and that would help you as you move on to those full time jobs.
Yeah, I agree, and we've discussed this in a previous podcast, but I think that if I was like a director of communications and I was looking for a PR person, for example, um, I may lean towards maybe like a rides person or foods person or something because, like we've discussed before, if a guest comes up to you and they ask you a question, you're speaking on behalf of the company for that moment, and if you typically have positive feedback, and well, you can handle things like that, especially. I think that that kind of opens a very large door for the fact that you may be able to do it on a grander scale. Would you agree with that?
Hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So there are certain jobs it seems like that people have to be seasonal in order to get. So, for example, you're not going to get hired. You finish college with a degree in business operations, then you get hired as the rides manager. It just doesn't happen. You have to ascend the ranks. What are some positions when the company that you do definitely need to have worked up in, and what are some of the ones that you often see externally, just to make sure that we make the separation?
Well, let's start externally. I mean, we'll look at myself. Communications, PR jobs, social media jobs. If you're in human resources, maybe in food and beverage. Having worked in the restaurant industry, those things will translate pretty well. If you're an auto mechanic, you can come and work at a park and be in the maintenance department. Those kind of things, they all translate very well to this industry. But for me, it's operations. Anything in that operations department, you almost have to have, you really do have to have been um, trained in that area to be able to work your way up and become like a director of operations, manager of operations, VP of operations. There's so much involved. There's so much to learn that you can't come from really any other industry and just start at one of those kind of positions. Just I look at myself again in times when, I've gone out in the park and I have, helped out and worked a ride or something. It seems pretty simple, but it's not. There's so much involved that you have to know and understand. So for me, operations is the one area that, you really, really got to. you got to work your way up seasonally and into those upper positions. You're just not going to come off the street and walk into that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. Operations definitely comes to mind, specifically rides. The only exception would be if you went from one chain to another, one park to another.
Right.
Obviously, that's not necessarily straight
That's different
vertical.
on that.
Right. But my thought, when I'm mentally creating this list of positions somebody could move into in the theme park industry that were not seasonal, I think that marketing is possible because that,
Yeah, I mean, it all translates. It's all
right,
the one thing that really comes into play though is in this industry, you are open weekends, you are
right,
open holidays, and that's not always going to be the case if you're working for some other brand as a marketing person, as a communications person. It's not going to necessarily be that 24/7, 365 at times. So, but it does translate. I mean, marketing's marketing, PR is PR, social media is social media. You just find a way to make it work for wherever you are in those things. But other thing, like we talk about operations, you have to have grown up with that. What I mean by that is
right.
that's one of your jobs. You start out at 16, 17, or whatever age, you learn it from the ground floor up, then you're ready to take on those jobs. You just can't come from the outside and do that. And operations is not just rides. We're talking about everything, that you're overseeing the whole park. You're talking about entertainment, you're talking about special, all that kind of thing. You have to really, really put in the time and learn it.
I agree. I would say entertainment, you could probably splice out a little bit though. If you're a tech guy, then if you do it for Cirque du Soleil, you could probably come do it at a park, and things
Oh
like
yeah.
that. But you're right. As far as like, the development and stuff, and actually, even like casting, I imagine it's different when it's 6 days a week, 5 shows, than it is for a long weekend or something. Um,
Right.
but you could probably also like security typically probably works their way up, but that's something that is relatively universal. Just um,
The basic skills of it are yes, but it's a totally different environment in the amusement and theme park industry than it would be if you were doing security at something else that wasn't, where there's thousands and thousands of people coming in every day.
right, and a lot of it's probably like pecking order too. Like with foods, for example, you could theoretically say, if you're the general manager of a Wendy's, you could probably handle it here. But at the same time, if a lot of people are ascending internally, there probably aren't going to be a lot of opportunities for an outsider. Like if a manager has 5 area managers under them, they probably have one person that's ready to replace them in an instance of attrition. So that could affect opportunities too. Um, so like moving on, when we're talking about seasonal jobs and stuff, if you guys haven't figured it out, we're kind of speaking to those that are, probably between the ages of 16 and 22 that want to get into the industry and they don't see maybe the points in coming to work seasonally. And what we're trying to get across is that that's where the opportunity is. Um, but y- when somebody looks at positions, rides, food, security, stuff like that, but ultimately they want to work in finance, what kind of advice would you give them?
Well, I think, in terms of, maybe not right off the bat being able to get to where they want to go. I mean, you're not always going to be able to start that way, in the position that you want, but it is good to learn other areas of the business, um, other parts of operations. It makes you more well-rounded. More informed about the industry, what's all involved with it. So, if a job becomes available and it's not what you want to do, I would still take it. If you're interested in getting into the industry and just see where it goes from there. Ultimately, it may lead to where you want to go, but it also may become the thing you want to do. Sometimes people put up the roadblocks; they don't want to do it. But try it and see if you like it. And oftentimes, we found that that was not their first, second, or even third choice, but they've been doing it now for 20 years full times, 30 years full time, just because they got into it, they liked it, they learned it, and they grew with it. So I would just say that, take what's available, expand your skill set, and just see where it takes you.
Right. And just like another little bit of advice, let me get a little anecdotal here outside of the industry. So, my girlfriend is on the brink of being a dietitian. So a dietitian obviously is somebody who works in a hospital that creates meal plans for people, especially people with special needs and so on. Special dietary needs, that is. So
Mhm.
she graduated college, and there's a lot of steps to becoming a dietitian. You have to do an internship where you got to have letters of recommendation. You have to be signed off on this and that, and you have to all sorts of stuff. All right. So she starts looking for a position. She was actually in the attractions industry, um, and she got offered this position, basically working in food service for one of the local hospitals. And she's like, I don't know if I should do it because I don't know if it helps my career and stuff. And I was like, look, you're going to face every single person that works in that hospital. So when it comes time to actually apply for something, they're going to know you. And I would say the same rings true for this.
Yeah.
If you're a especially if you're an outstanding ride operator, and you do get rewarded, you get recognized very often in this industry. Um, when that position for group sales or something opens up, maybe the director knows your name. Maybe they can go to the rides people or the operations people and, what do you think of this person? So that would definitely get your resume in the yeah, the maybe pile, at least I would say, you know.
Oh yeah, I mean, just being involved, it's if you're wanting a full-time job, it's easier to get one if you've been working at a park seasonally.
Mhm.
And there are some people who know who you are in that, than just throwing your name, into the bucket with thousands of others who are applying for that same position. And those full-time jobs, there's not a lot of them out there. And when they do become available, there's a lot of interest in them. So you're competing against a lot of people. So to give yourself the best chance, it's always good to be involved with the park, starting out seasonally. And if you can do it, even into your young adult years and that, just, along with whatever job you're doing at that time. That's always a good thing too.
Yeah, I agree. Um, so, besides, like, the benefits, every park has some sort of benefit. You probably get free
Mhm.
admission, discounts, bring a friend, whatever. Besides that, what are some of the rewards associated with doing this job?
I think it's an ever-changing type of environment, Ryan. It's challenging. You're gonna be challenged in this industry. I don't know that, other summer jobs that are out there now are going to do that for you. I don't know that they're gonna be as fast-paced. I don't know if they're gonna be, changing, all the time on the fly like that. I don't know that you're gonna get those, um, experiences that you need, and learn those essential skills that are gonna help you later on down the line, like we talked about earlier, with your communications and interpersonal skills and those kind of things. Um, you want a job that challenges you, and also when you're in this industry, you can tell in your role that, you know, you're making people
Right.
happy. A lot of people, they save up their money and they, maybe they come from, modest means and this is the biggest day of the year for them. And you help them have that best day ever. I mean, there's nothing like that. When you go home and you know that, that these guests came in with this experience, expectation, and you delivered on that experience
Yeah, I mean, I
that
I
they
I
had.
agree, and there's something to be said about being in the business of fun. Be in the business of making people happy. There is a certain fulfillment aspect to that. And, I think that we have that with this podcast too. I mean, I don't think that it's a big secret. We're not really making any money on it. But, for the time being, the fact that every once in a while someone's like, hey, listen to the podcast. It was fine. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, you love hearing
yeah.
that and, getting their feedback on it and, and I like when they're honest about it, that they tell us the things that they like about it, they tell us the things they don't like about it, and I think that's good, and again, taking that kind of feedback, like you would get working in a park, you take the feedback that you're given and you use that to make yourself better.
Yeah, it's funny because we try to integrate the feedback. We really do. Sometimes you and I get conflicting feedback because for me, I remember when we had the first 5 or 6 episodes, I was kind of on the fence about pick 6 because I was thinking
Mhm,
like, people, come for the best possible mobile app or whatever, and then we're
mhm.
going on and on about Shanghai Disney or whatever. Um, but I had people like, "No, my favorite part's the pick six. I love hearing you guys talk about the industry and stuff." But then you got feedback that we ramble too much in it. So we're
Yeah,
always like, "All
yeah,
right,
they
we're gonna
thought
ramble less. We are
they
gonna no,
thought
we
yeah,
never ramble
that's what they
less."
said, get to the topic, say your have your take and move on. That's what they, was the recommendation, the feedback that I got, and, we've kind of merged that all together with what we're taking, and we get better each and every other podcast that we have.
Right, and I think that part of that is, being able to find better 6 picks when the news is interesting rather than like the way that it works behind the curtain
Yeah.
is I think you Don I think we've pretty much created a trade-off system where one week I make the format, then the next week you make the format. I think we've just kind of fallen into that because I made this one, but I think you made last week. But nonetheless, we pitched a couple stories, for pick six, and basically it's like, here's 10, pick the six that you want to do. Um,
It's
it,
collaborative. Something I've learned working in the industry that it just can't be what I want to do. You got to be collaborative. You got to work with your
Right,
teammates.
but like, it's funny because there's some of the things that you sent me just nauseated me, like, "Oh, Tron has an opening date." I am so tired of talking about Tron. So we're not talking about Tron in the Pick 6, spoiler alert, tonight. But with that being said, there is a lot of interesting things in the industry, so definitely stay tuned. So speaking of, the rewards, of working in the industry, I was
Mhm.
kinda talking about like, fulfillment and stuff, but I asked, on Twitter, theme park employees, "Which is the most rewarding part of the job besides the company benefits?" And at bschrotes5 said, "When I worked at Disney, it was free admission and 2.99 CC's pizza." Um, well, free admission to Disney World is definitely go or Disneyland, whatever you worked for. Um, isn't CC's pizza only $5? You got a $2 discount on it?
That's still a good deal.
That's true. $5 is $5.
And then think about it. If you go there 5 or 6 days a week, it's not just $2. Now all of a sudden it's $10, $15 that you're saving.
That's true. So if you just eat CC's for every meal, then you can absolutely afford that house in Orlando.
Yeah, it adds up. It adds up.
Um, so, moving on, what are some of the skills, like personality traits that full-time, like, directors and managers are looking for, amongst, like, seasonal employees, to move them up the chain?
I think communication, leadership skills. I think those two come to the forefront there. That you're a good communicator. You've got the leadership skills. You can lead your team. Those types of things. Are right up there with that. And I think work ethic.
Mhm.
Willingness to do whatever it takes to get the job done. You're looking at that too, because you're not always going to be. Even though you're full time and here's your role, you're going to have to step outside of that role many times during the season and assist in other areas. So that willingness to do whatever it takes is also something that it's something that you have to be able to do.
Yeah, I agree. And there are different things that, just with age and what I've seen with different projects and working with different people. Um, yeah, and probably the best way that was summed up was by, our mutual friend Bill Mefford, and he told me the life advice he gave me, and this was not long after I met you, so like 50 years ago, and it's always like stuck with me. He said, "Unsuccessful people sit around and" how did he phrase it? I'm sorry. He said, "Unsuccessful people think about why they can't be successful, why they can't do what they want to do. Successful people look at the situation to figure out a way to be successful." And I think that rings true. If you're a restaurant manager and it's just like, we're understaffed, so that's why the surveys are down and sales are down and stuff like that. That's making excuses. That's never going to get any better. A
No,
successful
no, you don't
manager
want
would
excuse
either
making.
find a way to staff it, find a way to be more efficient, find some other way to innovate. Um,
Yeah.
it,
And here's the other thing: so many people talk a good game, but at the end of the day, you are what you do,
mhm.
and that shows through also when you're in this industry. Again, you can have all the be the good talker and talk a good game about here's what you're going to do, here's how you're going to do it, but at the end of the day, you are what you do, and everyone's going to see the performance.
I mean, a lot of it is, there's much to be said about the problem solving skills associated with it. I don't think that I'm not trying to imply that like a full-time employee is always dealing with disgruntled customers or anything like that. But I think that if you're a line level employee and you're very good at diffusing situations and making people walk away happy, that shows a lot of problem solving skills, you
It
know.
does. It
And
does.
and that would definitely be something that I would be looking for.
Yeah, it comes to the forefront about what your skills and abilities are when you're able to do that.
Yeah. Well, Don, do you have any final thoughts about breaking into the industry?
I think if you want to do it, you've ever thought about it, now's the time. Like I said earlier, go online, look at the parks in your area, your region, and see what the opportunities are and take a shot at it. I often think, when I started going to Kings Island a lot in the 80s, that I sometimes wonder if I'd have made that turn toward the right and went to human resources instead of staying to my left and going straight to the front gate and going in and having a lot of fun that day, would I have done this a lot earlier? Would I've gotten into different roles and different experiences and things? And the answer to that's yeah. That probably would have happened a lot sooner for me. I always wanted to do this, and I did come from outside the industry in terms of what my careers and communications and PR, social media, and that. But at the same time, I look back and I'm thinking, what should 17, 18, 19-year old Don, knowing what I know today, what would I have done? And I would have gone to human resources instead of through the front gate and tried to get my foot in the door a lot earlier.
Do you mind if I play devil's advocate real quick?
Yeah.
So, y- so you talk about like, when you're 18, 19 years old, you could have made that turn and maybe worked up the ladder or whatever. Um,
I would have got in earlier. Let's just put
okay,
it
you
that
would
way.
have
Just
gotten
get
in
in earlier.
earlier, but you also got like 3 hockey teams off the ground from the beginning. And
Well, there's a lot of other experiences too,
I
exactly with
think you
that.
were able to draw from that and create, quite a significant career over the past, what is it, 15 years or so that you've been there? Um, drawing on that experience, and you would not have had that same experience. Now, for all we know, you could be a regional GM. I mean, I don't have a
Well, who knows what? But I mean, I probably would not have at that age. I definitely probably would not have been in communications and PR and social media. I probably been more of an operations type
right,
person. But at the same time, having always wanted to work in the industry and now knowing what's the best way to get into the industry, that would have been the way to go. I'm just using it as an example. That would have been the way to go, where it would have happened a lot sooner for me.
right, and I don't mean for my comment to be discouraging because obviously you took a path that was parallel. You were in entertainment marketing regardless. It was
Oh
sports
yeah, yeah. I
entertainment.
mean, yeah, I still got to do what I wanted to do. I mean, it was, like you said, working for hockey teams and um, being able to be in an opportunity where there was a lot less risk if you made mistakes. When you're talking about that, opposed to working at a major park,
Correct. Yeah.
where you can experiment a little bit more, find out what works, what doesn't work. So you have all that together. You've made all your mistakes and things. You've tested the waters. You know what works, what doesn't work, in those other fields before you came. Before I came into the theme park industry.
Right. And it's I guess I misinterpreted what you were saying as, I
Well, I'm just saying if you're interested in it,
right. Well,
do it.
but I was
That's
thinking like you were thinking like, oh, if my career were different and I could have cut out the sports and stuff. But you're right. Like if you're 18 and you're working for, Wendy's or something like that and you have aspirations in the industry, just do it. What's the worst that could happen? Yeah, I mean, if you
exactly.
find
Just
out you
do it.
hate it, then you know. All right. Well, Don, sometimes the news around here is like drinking out of a fire hose, isn't it? So
It
that
is.
brings us to, oh, we don't have the pick six intro. Forget that. The pick six. All right. Are you ready for story numero uno? I think I'm starting off this one. No, no, no.
You're leading
No,
off.
yeah, I am leading off. So let's see what we got. We are traveling from Cincinnati, where we are, down to Orlando, Florida, where we're stopping at Walt Disney World. So it looks like Disney is walking back some of the Bob Chapek things. It looks like there's going to be some price reductions and some things that really cater towards the annual pass base, such as you don't have to have reservations for park hopping after 2 o'clock, which I think is awesome. So we knew that Iger would have to go in and make some changes. Did you think it would be this fast?
I thought he would be, pretty proactive and start making changes after the first of the year. Now, what this tells me with the price rollbacks on some things, and that is the guest, they spoke
Mhm.
and they listened.
Right.
That's important. They listened to their guests, and I think that's why you're seeing this. So that's what that told me.
Well, and it's funny because from an economic standpoint, when you talk about supply and demand, um, the parks were so packed that you had to have reservations, and this is even post-COVID. So it seems like the last thing they would want to do is lower prices, but here we are. And I guess it comes down to the fact that, the last year and a half or so have been really distasteful when it comes to the Walt Disney Corporation. And it looks like they're, doing what they can to be on the mend. So good for them. All right, Don. Where are we going next? We are going to. Indianapolis,
We're,
Indiana.
we're going to Indianapolis, and this kind of disappoints me a bit because being a big carousel fan, but the Children's Museum of Indianapolis, they're limiting carousel animal rides to guests age 17 and under. Now, this carousel originally operated or opened in 1917. That was what was called White City Amusement Park in Indianapolis. Later became Broad Ripple Park. But who puts an age limit on a
That's some
carousel?
insane. I'm not a huge fan of the age limits on ride thing, but I'm not a parent too. I know that the little like the Miller coasters and stuff often have like you've got to have a kid with you kind of situations where I understand that I don't want my 3-year-old riding with like a bunch of 39, almost 40-year-old coaster enthusiasts or whatever. But a carousel? I mean, everything is reactionary in nature. So I wonder if there was some sort of problem with adults, but a carousel?
Exactly. I don't get it. And, for me, I hadn't been on that one yet, so I'm not going to get my credit.
Yeah, your carousel credits. That's yeah.
It's important.
Where are we going next, Don? We are going to let's follow the chemtrails are behind us. We are going to Las Vegas, Nevada. Las Vegas and Texas, actually. And this is the one of the big newses of today. So Universal is opening up 2 new parks, essentially. The one in Las Vegas is going to be a year-round Horror Nights experience. The other one in Texas is going to be an actual resort just north of Dallas. It's going to have a hotel, a park, and it's going to be more geared towards families and stuff. Now, to be clear, they haven't really told. I mean, they told us like what city the Texas one's in and what like obviously Las Vegas for the other one. We don't have an opening date. We don't have a lot of details. Um, they also don't really define what a family park is because Hagrid's is a family ride, and that's pretty extreme. So, is it a kiddie park? Who knows? But Don, which one of the two are you more excited for?
I would say the Universal going into Dallas. I think that is a tremendous market to go into. It's enough, depending on how close it is to what they have in California and Orlando, but I think it's a good market to get into. Um, Dallas has always been an entertainment town. Um, Even as hot as it gets out there, outdoor entertainment is what that city's all about too. So I think it's a good fit.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, what's funny though is there's a huge history of failed amusement parks in Texas. Though, if you look at Astro World, and obviously this is not just because people stopped showing up. There's always more to the story. But there was Astro World, and then there was like that. Was it the Hanna-Barbera Land, in
Hmm.
Houston, which closed too? So I've always wondered about that because obviously Fiesta Texas has been very successful. Six Flags Over Texas has been very successful, but there have been failures there. With that being said, though, Universal has their head screwed on with this stuff. In the
I think Dallas is probably a little bit better market, um, for an entertainment venue of this magnitude than Houston would have been. Back in the day when they had Astroworld and that. It was right there where the Astrodome is. It was on the outskirts a little bit,
Mhm.
not the easiest place for a lot of people to get to. You were going to get more locals. You weren't going to get the at that time, Houston wasn't a place where a lot of people from out of town
Yeah,
went, unless you wanted to go to Gillies, if back in the urban cowboy movie days where everybody went there because they had to go to Gillies. And I being one of those people at that time. But, I think that, you know, you look at, like you said, Fiesta's done very well in the San Antonio area. Uh, but I think it's a good thing just because of what Dallas is about, just that entertainment mecca like that. The people there, they love to be entertained and they like outdoor entertainment, even though it gets hot.
it does. But so here's some food for thought for you. So in that same market as Six Flags Over Texas, they're in the Dallas Fort Worth market, right?
Yeah, so I mean, it'd be close by to that, but I think you're looking at two different type of demographics, and you're talking a thrill seeker kind of
Right.
park, a family kind of park. So I think you would be catering to two different, audiences there. You're not going head to head for the same guest.
Well, that also comes down to, again, how they define a family park. Because if they have,
Hmm.
if it's all about meet and greets with characters and stuff, which was highlighted, and I think it's going to be more about an experience than rides. Um, I think that the two can exist in the same place at the same time. But if Universal ever turns that corner of deciding, well, we're going to start putting in roller coasters, they do it better than almost anybody else. And one thing that I have noticed about them, especially in the Orlando region, is they understand when it gets hot. So a lot of stuff's indoors. Disney does it too, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, let me ask you this,
Mhm.
Ryan, too. The one drawback that I would have on this, or negative, is when you ask people where they went on vacation. You hear, "Oh, we went to
Yeah,
California. Oh, we went to Orlando." When was the last time someone said, "Oh, I went to Dallas"? They might have gone there for a sporting event or something. When was the last time you went to Dallas on vacation? When was the last time you went to Houston on vacation? You don't hear that, often, if at all. And I think that's the one thing that that would have going against it, is it's not the vacation mecca of the world like Orlando and California
I
are.
completely agree. But that brings up another interesting point. Remember, they told us not to ramble about these subjects, but this is just too interesting not to
They
talk
did.
about. Okay, so
This isn't rambling. This is
this is
insight.
insight. But let me throw this on on the table. The description of the actual park is that it's a regional park. So does that mean that in Universal's eyes, they would look at other markets? I mean, Nashville doesn't have a park. That's an entertainment place. People go there on vacation. I mean, that's food for thought. Because Dallas is a little random, I think. I mean, you're right. It's
Yeah.
big with entertainment and stuff, but I mean, people from Dallas would go to Orlando.
Oh yeah.
So it's very interesting, and it's what are the next steps? If this is really successful, I could see them wanting to plant them in more places. It's probably south of the southern part of the United States, just so they can get that at least that Dollywood-esque season out of it. Either that, or they just be year round because they'll accommodate for cold. But
Hmm.
this is extraordinarily interesting. Um, well, okay, cool. So we were talking about Texas. We were actually in Las Vegas because the plane didn't take a layover in Texas. But now we're going to go back to Texas, and this is not as good of news.
It's not in Lubbock, Texas, Joyland Park. Now, we talked several podcasts ago about a group of investors was going to purchase this park, but they backed out. So the park is going to remain closed for good. It's a loss for the community. A lot of memories there for the locals who either work there or just remember going there during the summers and just having fun with family and friends. So it's never good to see a park closed, and that's the sad news of the week, is the news out of
Yeah,
Joyland.
so I didn't get to research this one as much, but did they announce that the park will be raised, or is it just that it's not going to open?
Just not going to open.
Okay, so there is maybe some small chance that maybe somebody because there's a difference between like, okay, the investors backed out and a real estate development company bought the land.
Yeah.
That is a
Yeah, I haven't heard that yet. Just that the investors backed out. But I would, it's going to be very tough right now, because they would try it for a long time to even find those investors uh, that stepped forward back when they did back in the fall.
Yeah, and it's funny because people really have a problem putting their money where their mouth is in a lot of cases. Look at Coney Out Lake Park. They owed like a bunch. They had like a tax bill or something. I don't know the whole story, but there was a whole saga for like a half decade. But then the trustees wanted to buy it, but then they couldn't fund it, and it's easy to spend other people's money, but very unfortunate. I never got. Did you ever get to go to Joyland Park?
I never did. I was in the area once back in, I think, 1991 or 92. Just couldn't fit it in at that time. But like I said, it's just sad that it's not the biggest park by any
Yeah.
means, the biggest rides or anything like that. But there are memories there, and so it's unfortunate when you have these situations.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Now that you bummed me out in Texas, let's head back to sunny California. We're going back to Universal because Universal has announced the opening date of Super Nintendo World for Hollywood. It's going to be February 17th of 2023, which is about a month and a week from now. Um, it looks like that they have some materials up for the annual pass holders getting a preview and stuff. Um, Don, I tell you what, I grew up with Super Mario Brothers. I wasted 3 years of my life playing Mario 3. Still can't beat level 7, to this day. Um, I usually don't really worry about stuff coming to parks that aren't my home park. but I'm super jealous of these annual pass holders that get to check out Super Nintendo World. I think that's so cool.
It is, and the initial reviews online from those who have had a chance from like the media and different influencers and that they got a chance to kind of tour through it. It's very good. You know, they were very impressed with it from what I was reading. The visual, that they had in their mind, was exceeded when they got there and got to walk around. One of the cool things I heard, or that I read about was that one of the restaurants has a hamburger that has the little Super Mario
Yeah, I
hat
saw that.
on it, and that was really cool. So a lot of cool things, and it's good to see that sometimes these things get hyped as they're being announced and being built, and it doesn't meet people's expectations. But it seems like across the board, from the reviews that I've been reading is that everybody walked away very impressed.
Yeah, and I think there's something to be said about some of the mentality. Um, Because if you think about the most successful, like, worlds or lands or areas, they're the ones that people would wanna visit in real life. I would love to go to the Mushroom Kingdom. I'm gonna get to do that eventually, you know? I'm not the biggest Harry Potter fan, but people die to go to Hogwarts. And if I messed up and Hogwarts is not what I think it is, then just correct me in the comments. Same for, like, Star Wars, the Galaxy's Edge and all that stuff. People are diehard about Star Wars, and they would love to ride on that Millennium Falcon, and they get to do that now.
Hmm.
But I think that on the contrary, you've got like the Avatar Land or Pandora at Animal Kingdom, which was very successful. But I don't know of anybody that like aspires like I really wish I could go to Disney World so I can see Pandora for myself. But
Hmm.
I think that part of that is that it's not quite a franchise because for 15 years it was only one movie. But very, very exciting news. I really want to go there.
Yeah, it just looks like one of those things that you're going to really be able, like the Harry Potter world at the Universal parks. You're going to be able to really immerse yourself right into it.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Don, I hope you packed your coat because we're not going to be in California anymore. We are hopping on a plane and we are heading to everybody's favorite destination, Sandusky, Ohio, which made some changes to the winter chill out program there. So for those of you who don't know, winter chill out is they do a walkthrough for charity. But Don, why don't you explain what a little bit more about winter chill out and what's different this year?
Well, due to the popularity of this event, it's raised thousands of dollars for an organization called A Kid Again. Raises money for families and children with the kids have life-threatening illnesses. So just a great cause that they have there. But very popular, sold out very quickly. So they've added a second day. The event this year is going to be February 25th through the 26th. Would-be guests, they're able this week to fill out an online form. Winners will be selected randomly next week on who's going to be able to attend. So it's one of those things that the demand, the interest far outweighs the supply. But if you're interested in going, go online right now, cedarpoint.com website, and fill out that form and take a shot at being able to attend this event. Not only do you get to see the park in a way that you never do at any other time, during the winter time there, you get, tours of the maintenance shops, those kind of things. You get to see the rides, a lot of them dismantled out on the midways. Uh, but the main reason you want to go is because of the cause, raising money for Kid Again families.
Yeah, obviously a great cause. Yeah, there's something to be said about seeing a summer destination in the winter. And I think that's really cool. I've actually never done winter chill out, but I've done several different events very similar to that. Um, just for me, probably Sandusky is the last place I want to be in January. But for the people that are die hard, they have a great experience there. They also often have the opportunity to buy the next year's merchandise before it goes on sale. I got a friend that is die hard winter chill out, does it every year. And he buys like the new poster or whatever. So that's a really, really cool experience. So Don, pick six is obviously six, but we're going to go for a 2 point conversion real quick. We're going to touch on two different things because there is a little bit of breaking news that your wonderful Beast roller coaster is now once again the second longest roller coaster in the world. Because the Ultimate, let me pull up the information. The roller coaster, the Ultimate at Lightwater Valley, is going to be removed. It's in North Yorkshire, England. It was built in 1991. They say that it's going to be removed because they are focusing more on, you know, family attractions, kiddie stuff. Probably maintaining something that long is very expensive if that's going to be their demographic. But congratulations to the Beast for getting bumped up the list a little bit. I guess Steel Dragon 2000 is still the longest, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, the Beast is still gonna, it's still the world's longest wooden roller coaster and probably always will.
Yeah, no one's dumb enough to top that record. But with that being said, I'm so glad they were dumb enough to make that record because what a great ride. Um, yeah, so it's always a bummer when a ride's taken out. I guess fortunately for me, it's probably a ride that I never would have had the opportunity to ride. But if you're a diehard, then my condolences to you because I know that sometimes there's an emotional connection to the ride. So the other side of the 2 point conversion, just to touch on, because there isn't a lot of information, is Cedar Point did release a video pertaining to Top Thrill Dragster. It has very little information, but what we do know is that whatever reimagining Top Thrill Dragster, and they did not use the phrase Top Thrill Dragster in their social media video, is going to be a 2024 project, which is really not a surprise to anybody. Um, I know the two of us do not have any information on that to share, but Top Toe Dragster is my favorite ride at Cedar Point, and I can't wait to see what they do with it.
Same here, and I love the way they just kind of dropped it in their social media channels, and it just kind of took on a life of its own. And now everybody's speculating, and it did what I guess they wanted it to do.
Do you know why they picked the date that they did?
I don't.
That was the anniversary of when they announced the ride in 2003. I
Oh,
wouldn't
okay.
have known if other people didn't say it, but I know. Now you do too.
Yeah, I'm so focused on my own things that I have to do, that I haven't had a chance really to look too much into, what the tie-in in that was there.
Right. I
But
I
it's a
would
great,
never put that
but it's a
connection
great tie-in.
together.
It's a great tie-in. I love it.
Okay, so full disclosure, we decided that we're both very passionate about the NFL and our Bengals. So Houday to anyone listening. Kind of done with the theme park stuff. So if you want to stop at this point, completely understand. But we're going to talk a little bit about the playoff picture at this point. For those of you who don't know, Don is extraordinarily knowledgeable about the NFL because he's got so much information about roller coasters and football that he in hockey that he barely knows how to drive anymore because you can only fit so much information on that mental hard drive. But we're going to talk about a
Right.
little bit about the wild card situation here. So Don, let's talk about your different predictions. I'm going to start at the top of the list. Got San Francisco 49ers, Seattle Seahawks. What are your thoughts?
I'm going to go with the 49ers, 31-20. They split their season series this year, but I can't see the Seahawks getting more than 20 points against the 49ers defense and the 49ers, that system that they have. They've got the undrafted rookie quarterback, Brock Purdy, that came in when Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt. They didn't miss a beat. Christian McCaffrey came over in a midseason deal. I mean, they have weapons on offense. Seattle's had a good year, but in this one where it's a win or go home, Seattle's going to go home again, 31-20.
It's funny because Seattle, I remember for about 5 years, I was absolutely unstoppable. Several different Super Bowl runs and stuff. But yeah, I was going to pick the 49ers as well. Uh, this one should be relatively obvious. Chargers and Jaguars. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to say Jacksonville stuns the
Really?
Chargers. They win 28-27.
Oh God.
Jacksonville's played very, very well the second half of the year. They won the division. They're playing with a lot of confidence. They're playing, I guess, with house money because they've arrived into the playoffs, maybe a year or two ahead of
Hmm.
schedule. So playing with that house money always makes you a dangerous team. I just like the way they were playing going into the playoffs, and the Chargers. Their coach. um, he's there's a lot of in-game decisions that always makes you scratch your head.
Hmm.
Whenever you're watching the Chargers play, sometimes going on fourth downs and things when it's you probably should have punted and those kind of things. So I'm going to take Jacksonville, 28 to
Well, I
27.
was going to take the Chargers because obviously the Chargers are a strong team. You make a good case. Very happy for the Jaguars. I mean, if anything alone,
Yeah.
over the past like 10 years or so, they've had like attendance problems and stuff, and a successful team generally draws. Because wasn't that a team that like there was a rumor they're going to go to London, but like they would never let
Oh
Tony
yeah.
Khan
Yeah.
do that. Um, so Yeah, I'm gonna take the Chargers on that one because I'm gonna go for easy. What about Dolphins and Bills?
Dolphins and Bills. Now let's start with the Dolphins. They're not going to have Tua, uh, their quarterback there. He's got the concussion issues, so he's not going to
Yeah,
play. So that's a big time loss for them. Buffalo, one of the top three teams easily, not just in the AFC, but probably the whole NFL. The Dolphins do have weapons. They're going to score some points. But I'm going to go Bills 34, Dolphins 20 in
I
this
was
one.
thinking top of my head. I was thinking Bills. When you said 34, I was thinking more like 17 for Dolphins. Yeah, I heard Tua took another hit to the head. That's scary because
Yeah.
that's three this season. Because remember, he got hit, and then when they played the Bengals, he got hit again, and he almost got. That was scary too. We've had a lot of really bad
Yeah.
moments this season.
Yeah, he's had like 3 or 4, so Tua Tagovailoa, the Dolphins quarterback, I think if I'm him, he's recently married, and that kind of thing, young children, I would, I would say goodbye to the NFL. I mean, you gotta think about your future in that as much as he'd wanna play football. I think it's more about his health moving forward in that. But if they had him and he was healthy, I think they would give the Bills a run and they could, potentially upset them, but without him, their offense just isn't it doesn't work as well. It doesn't function as well without him running the offense. So I'm going to say Dolphins. 20 points is about as much as they're going to be able to muster, and I think they're going to get some of those points. 7 of those points they're going to pick up an interception or something on Josh
Yeah.
Allen, and but other than that, they're going to have a tough time getting to the end zone with their offense.
Well, it seems like a lot of the media is like gushing over the Bills. This is before the whole incident last Monday or whatever, but um,
No, I haven't looked at the weather too. That's another thing that if it's really, really cold and windy, or there's, some snow and that on the ground. I mean, that just changes the whole dynamic there because, that impacts the Bills as much as their opponents in that. So it's very hard to predict, especially in December and January, games in Buffalo because the weather plays such a role in that. Where you know people think there's, if the Bills lose, that it's a big upset. Maybe not because the weather had a hand in
do
that.
you think that there's a factor in like Miami would is less used to the cold weather? Like, do you think that's a thing? I've always wondered that.
I think that's something that the media likes to talk
Hmm.
about. I think the players, a lot of them, they grew up, in these cold weather climates. They played college football in cold weather climates. I don't think it's as big a deal as the media likes to make that out to be. When you're out in the field playing football, I mean, it's cold, but it's still football, and you just do your thing. You're not really thinking about it as much.
Yeah, I've noticed they wear like short sleeves when it's like -5 degrees out and stuff, and I'm
Yeah.
not.
So, but I don't. I think that's more of cold is more of a media thing. Now, when they're talking about snow and rain and all that kind of stuff, yeah, that's gonna be a little bit different for you because yeah, Buffalo's gonna be more used to playing in snow. Than they are going to be, than the Dolphins would be. But the Dolphins, they still have cold weather games throughout the season.
Yeah, well, that was my thought too, because it's not like the Dolphins live in Miami and only play in Miami. Because if anything, they have an indoor practice facility like everybody else. Um,
Yeah, but they're playing. They got games against the Jets in New York. So they've got games against. They came to Cincinnati. It's a little bit warmer when they came here in October, but other years they've come in December.
mhm.
They go to Kansas. They go to all those other places that are cold.
Well, let me ask you this: what if it's the other way around? What if it's the Bengals are practicing and stuff, and they're playing in the cold. They go down to Miami. It's 75 degrees. They're like, well, this is easy. I wonder if it actually works
I
to the
don't think that same
disadvantage.
thing. I don't think it's the same thing where I don't think that bothers, anybody when it's warmer. I think the one place where it comes into play the most is going to be Denver because the altitude difference, where Denver's used to the altitude, and it takes a visiting team time to adjust to that. So I think that's where you would have a difference for a team coming in where it's that much tougher to play with the element just because of the altitude.
Yeah. Giants and Vikings.
Vikings had a great year, but they go home. I'm going to say the upstart Giants 24, the Vikings 22. I like the way Daniel Jones was playing down the stretch. Their coach Brian Dable, he's had really changed the culture there. They can run the ball. They've got a great defensive line. I don't trust Kirk Cousins in big games, the Vikings
Mm.
quarterback. So Giants will win 24-22.
Ooh, that close of a game.
That close of a game.
Wow. Uh,
Yeah, you look at the records, not even close. The Vikings had a great season. Kind of ran away with their division, but just the way again, it's how you're playing. Who's playing the best football going into January, and the Giants have played better football than the Vikings over the last month.
yeah. All right. Okay. Ravens and Bengals. We know you're going to pick the Ravens. So, all right. Ravens and
I'm
Bengals.
gonna go. I'm
Chat
gonna
me
go.
up.
Bengals 27. The Ravens 13.
Okay.
Lamar Jackson doesn't look like he's gonna play. So it means Tyler Huntley's gonna be the quarterback for Baltimore. Baltimore, you know, they have to be able to run the ball, and the Bengals can stop the run. Um, it's gonna be very tough for the Ravens to score. They're averaging under 14 points a game over the 5 games that Lamar Jackson's been out. Um, I think the Bengals, they're ready to roll, and they're playing great. They've won 8 in a row to end the season. They got Joe Burrow,
Mm-hmm.
who I think is the best quarterback in the
Mm-hmm.
NFL. But Bengals win this one 27 to
So
13.
if Joe Burrow stays healthy, I'm talking like career long.
Mhm.
He stays healthy. He maintains, within reason of age, the type of play that he's made in the last 2 years, or he's performed in the last 2 years. Do you think he goes on the Mount Rushmore of quarterbacks, like of all time in the NFL?
That's a tough place to be. I mean, I think of his era, he would. If you're talking about all time, I mean, there's just so many, out there that you would have to get past in that. We're talking like Johnny Unitas, Joe Montana, Tom Brady, those types. But during his era, whatever his career is, what's 12, 15, 18 years, whatever he plays, I think he would be number one or number two at worst in that run.
Yeah, I agree. I just think when it comes to Joe Burrow, it's almost kind of limitless as to what he can do if he stays healthy. He stays focused. He finds ways. He's so smart behind the ball. Like I noticed that he knew, like they went for it on fourth, and he just knew to spike it rather than like take a sack.
Yeah,
I mean, he barely didn't get the intentional grounding and all that stuff because he was just outside the box, but it was so smart because he knew where to cut his losses. And I think that's a huge decision because if
yeah,
he was,
yeah. He sees the game differently than anybody else out there too. And um, I was watching NFL Network a few weeks ago, and a former wide receiver for the Green Bay Packers who played with Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, two really good ones. They asked him, "What quarterback, as a wide receiver, would you want if you could have anybody be your quarterback today? Who would you pick?" Everyone thought he was going to take Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, one of those
Mhm.
guys, and he said Joe Burrow, and he said because as a receiver, he puts the ball, his pinpoint accuracy, spot on all the time, gives you the best chance to make the catch. That's huge hearing it from a guy like that. And Joe's only in his third year. Normally, a lot of quarterbacks, they're still, maybe their first full year as a starter or something even at this stage. So where he is now in his third year, it's scary how good this guy's going to be. When he gets a little more experience, 3 or 4 more seasons under his belt.
I'm so glad we drafted him. I just couldn't fathom another quarterback that in the NFL, like if there was a one for one trade, I just can't think of anybody. If anything, Burrow's entertaining to watch, from a fan standpoint. But he knows how to make the plays done, and or make the plays happen. But if you look at it, year one, relatively successful towards ACL, so that could have been the end of him. Some people were never the
Yeah,
same
well,
after that.
yeah, there's quarterbacks out there. There's some that are more mobile,
Hmm.
some have a stronger arm. And he does in that. But when you look at the intangibles, the things that matter the most, um, he has that ability to elevate everyone around
Right.
him. We talked about leadership,
Hmm.
as a quality earlier in this podcast, but his ability to lead a team. I don't know that there's anyone else in the NFL that's as good a leader as he is right now. And again, he's only in his third year, but he's got tremendous leadership skills. He elevates everyone around him, and as long as he's the quarterback, uh, that gives the Bengals a chance in every game that they play, no matter who the opponent.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I hate to bring up this game because it's stricken from the record, but let's be honest. Their formidable opponent this year, the game that mattered the most was going to be that Buffalo game for that point. And he played them like a piano for that half quarter that they had. That doesn't reflect the entire game necessarily, but it showed that he had them dialed in. You know.
I knew before the game he was gonna, you know, play very well because I was watching his warm up tosses. He's out there like 3 hours before the game. He's in his sweats and that, just throwing to people on the sides and that. But he was just throwing lasers, spot on, right on the mark to guys along the sideline or wherever he wanted to put the ball. And I texted my friend and I said he's going to be really on tonight. I mean, I've not seen it like this ever. And I mean, he's good in the warm ups and stuff, but there was just something about that night that this was going to be a special night if that game had gone on. It didn't. And we all know
Right.
why it didn't. But you talk about wherever the Bengals have to play in the playoffs. I think that's why they're a legitimate Super Bowl contender because it doesn't matter whether you're playing at Paycor Stadium, you're playing in Buffalo, you're playing in Kansas City, or you're playing in a McDonald's parking lot. Joe Burrow is going to have his team in position to win the
Yeah,
game.
he just wants to play, man. He just wants to play. Yeah, you're talking about the laser line shot. You know what was funny is you made me think of Teddy Bridgewater. He was with Miami this year. I know that he's the backup.
He's played with Miami. Unfortunately for him, I liked him when he played at the University of
Yeah,
Louisville. I liked him when he first came in with the Minnesota Vikings. Good leadership skills, but he's just not been able to stay healthy. He's had a
no.
lot of injuries that he kind of wrecked his knee and stuff early on in
Yeah,
his
wasn't
career.
that pretty much the end
Um,
for him? That was the end of him being a starter. Was
just not never the
yeah.
same. Never the same after that. But I always liked Teddy
I did
Bridgewater.
too, but you're talking about throwing lasers. I remember that from when he was at U of L, and I got reminded of it when he took over for uh, yeah,
Tua,
for
yeah,
Tua at the Dolphins Bengals game. But he has a it's a blessing and a curse because he throws directly at the players. With that being said, he does get it to him and he gets to him quickly, but it's probably a challenge to catch when the ball's going for your chest, you know. But he
yeah,
he he
yeah.
performed for somebody that came in cold. I think he did rather well, but that's
Yeah, and when you look at these playoffs too, Ryan, and we're talking about the predictions and things I made, and you were a little surprised when I said Jacksonville over the Chargers, and that it's about matchups,
right.
too, and what you do best against what the other team does best, how you match up there. It comes down to that in these playoff games, and that's why sometimes a team that maybe won 9 or 10 games beats a team that won 13 or 14 games during a regular season because there was just something about it that they didn't match up well, and that gave that team another chance to win. I mean, that's why sometimes you see a team win two games in a series, in their division. They win both of their games against the first place team, but they don't beat anyone else. Again, it comes down to the matchups and that. So maybe a team's not good at stopping the run, and that's what the team does best that they're playing in the
Hmm.
playoffs, and they're not able to hang on. So it's it's a definitely different than just a regular season game. Totally different thing, but it really comes down to how you match up. Everybody's 0-0 starting this weekend. They're not whatever you were during the regular season, that's gone.
Right. Well,
So you're 0-0, and that's why like if the Chargers advance, they're a problem for other people.
yeah.
You know, um, I think Jacksonville matches up well with them, but I think there's teams that the Chargers that nobody wants to play them because there's not that matchup because they've got that really good defensive line. They've got big strong receivers. They got a running back that can catch the ball. Justin Herbert, he can sling it around the field. He's very very good. So there's some other teams that the Chargers will be a problem for if they get out of this wild card round.
Yeah. So speaking of matchups, and going 500 versus a team that won 13 or more, Cowboys and Bucks.
Cowboys and Bucks Monday night. You know, I'm gonna I'm gonna give Dallas this one. I'm gonna say 24-20. I don't like the way Dallas Dak Prescott, their quarterback. He's got interceptions. I think like 7 straight
Mm,
games. That's the one thing in the playoffs you just can't have is turnovers. But I just think Dallas has a really good defense, good pass rush. The Tampa Bay offensive line is very weak this year. Tom Brady, not the most mobile
right.
quarterback. He's not going to have a lot of time to throw. But they'll stay in the game because they have Tom Brady. I mean, they'll still be in it toward the end, but I'm going to give the Cowboys the victory here 24-20. And that game is in Tampa.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Cowboys as well, but I'm gonna say the spread's bigger. I'm gonna say it's more like 34-20, somewhere around there. I think that the psychology behind statistically how bad Tom Brady performed this year is going to really affect him. I think that he knows that this is his last season, and I think that as opposed to kind of like, oh, I'm gonna go out on a Super Bowl or whatever. It's gonna be like, I can't do this anymore. And I think that, being matched up against a team like Dallas, how Dallas has been this year, is going to be very difficult for him.
I think he can still play, and I think part of his poor performance is because the offensive line isn't very good. We saw that, for a number of years here when Andy Dalton was the Bengals quarterback. He just had no time to throw, and I don't care who you are. You could have brought Tom Brady in his prime into that situation with the offensive line the Bengals had, a couple of those years that Dalton was the quarterback. He's not going to be able to be as good just because there's just no time. So I think that's a big part of it is just that the offensive line hasn't been there for him, and they haven't had the running game most of the year. So he can still play, and I think he still will play after this
You
year.
really think he'll be back?
I do.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't disagree, and I think that you hit the nail on the head with the Andy Dalton thing. I think that guy's career was wasted with Cincinnati because he should have been a Super Bowl contender several of the years that he played.
Well, he got them to the playoffs, but there was always something that happened. I mean, the one year they play Houston, all their wide receivers are
Right.
hurt. So he doesn't have Tyler Eifert's out. The wide receivers are hurt. Not a good offensive line. Houston had uh, JJ Watt, or JT Watt coming at him, just barreling right through there in his face the whole game. So not his fault with that one. There's another game they were playing the Chargers in the playoffs. They're in control. Then there's a fumble,
Right.
midfield. Chargers pick it up. They take the lead. Don't get back in it. That's not something that was on the coach. That's not something that was on, the other. It's just part of the game. Fumbles, turnovers. Uh, then another year, the Bengals. Dalton was hurt. AJ McCarron was the quarterback. I think 2015, but they have the game won. All Jeremy Hill has to do is go down, but he fights for extra yardage, fumbles the ball. Pittsburgh gets it. Couple of undisciplined penalties, puts them in field goal range. They win the game. So there's a lot of years during, when Andy Dalton was the Bengals quarterback and Marvin Lewis was the coach, things just didn't go their way. It wasn't that you can't. Everybody blames the coach, everybody blames the quarterback, but you can't in those
No, no, I'm not
situations.
trying to be a Monday morning quarterback. But let me point this out to you because there is a contrast in what we're talking about. We're talking about how Joe Burrow is successful because he finds ways to win. Andy Dalton couldn't, or he wasn't given the tools necessary to do so.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a different culture between who Dalton was surrounded with and who Joe Burrow has around him, and that plays a big part in the success of teams too. Is that culture? Talent's not enough. You have to have a standard, a high
Right.
standard, and you have to have a head coach and coaching staff, and all the different position coaches that are going to hold everybody accountable to that standard. You have to have leaders in the room that are going to hold everybody accountable. Uh, they have that now. Other teams have that now. Philadelphia has that now. So those are the kind of things that make all the difference in the world is when you have those pieces in place, and that sometimes more talented teams aren't going to beat you because you're better in all those other areas.
Yeah, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to obviously, you're around the culture of the Bengals, so you can speak to that more, and you're not necessarily in the locker room every day, so it's hard to pin it down. But when we talk about contrasting Joe Burrow, Andy Dalton, and let's say even Carson Palmer, because I feel like they fall on the same shelf. Because Palmer, when he left the Bengals, was playoff bound. Um, but, do you think that the leadership skills that, Joe Burrow has been able to, I mean, you mentioned that he's like one of the best leaders in the NFL. Do you think that if Andy Dalton had that kind of charisma, would have made much of a difference?
Yeah, I mean it does. I mean, there's other quarterbacks that aren't as skilled as Andy Dalton, but they've had great careers because they're leaders. Philip Rivers for years, who played for the Chargers, one of those guys that just tremendous leadership skills. So the Chargers were always better than they should have been because of Philip Rivers. So those things take place. Now, what I like to watch during games too is watch the sideline. Sometimes watch what after plays and that. The reaction when guys come back to the sideline. What happens? Are guys in each other's faces? Almost getting into fights and stuff and arguments, or are they all supporting each other?
Yeah.
And you see a Cincinnati, and you see a Buffalo, you see a Philadelphia, where those guys are all playing for each other. And then you see other teams where there's always fighting on the sidelines. Cleveland comes to mind, that you don't see that camaraderie and everybody, caring for each other. So that has a lot to do with it too. So it starts, at the top with your coaching staff, and it goes down in the rooms. Then you have your position coaches and your you got to have the leaders in the room and all those other kind of things, and you have to have everybody playing for each other, and it's such a fine line,
Yeah.
and everybody's got the same kind of basic talent in the NFL, but there's such a fine line between that culture and having a winning organization or not, and it's just having the right guys who, that they play for each other, and you're just as happy if the other guy got the touchdown as if you scored it yourself. And you just watch the sideline of games, just watch on TV this weekend. Watch what happens when the Cowboys go to the sideline, or the Bucks go to the sideline, or any of those other teams, that are in the playoffs. And you'll see which teams have everybody, on the same page, and caring about each other and supporting each other and not caring who gets the credit. And you'll see teams that there's a lot of individualists out
Yeah.
there. And you see that in basketball too. Same thing where um, you got the greatest player, in NBA history, and he still plays at a very high level at age 38, LeBron James. Um, but he's not enough for the Lakers to win. So you see that everywhere in sports.
Well, I mean, to be fair, where LeBron James goes, the national championship goes to. That's very often. Maybe not the Lakers this year, but definitely Miami Heat and
Yeah, back then,
Cavaliers.
yeah,
And
but they had other guys around him, and everybody was on the same page, and it ran through him. But it's still, everybody knew their role, and everybody cared about one thing: winning.
well, that's one thing that's different
They
with basketball. And I don't want to go off on too much of this tangent, but it seems like if you've got one key play, if you've got your Michael Jordan, you can build a team around that one person.
you can, but you got to have people that aren't going to be jealous of Michael
Right.
Jordan.
That's why I'm saying like it's
You
the
know,
clear leader. The NFL, I mean, if you got a good quarterback, if the I think like just like with the,
well, you cannot win without a good
well, of
one.
course not, but I'm
One that's
saying
that's
like
got the intangibles and stuff. Um, but you got to have some of those. It's a lot of those guys, they can all throw, they can run, do all those other kind of things. But there's little intangibles, it's those leadership skills, or it's being able to see the game differently. Know what it's going to look like when you go up to the line. If you're a quarterback and you watched, you really are good at film study, and you can tell exactly what's going to happen, what this cornerback's going to do, what that linebacker is going to do, and you can adjust and change even the play at the line, or those kind of things. That's a difference, in a lot of quarterbacks, what they can do and what they can't do. They can't get the team in the right play at the line based on what the defense is doing after they read the
right,
defense. That's the thing we talked about Andy Dalton. He was very good at that, getting the team in the right play. He doesn't get credit for that, but he was very good at that. Other quarterbacks, not so much. So that's a difference between, again, winning and losing, just getting your team in that right play. So the check downs. Don't be afraid to just dump it off to the running back or something if it's not there. Other teams, you have a quarterback that he tries to just gun it in there. Like somebody might be double or triple coverage, but they really love their arm and they think that they can gun it in there, and it doesn't work for them. Where you just got to be smart, and you see that with different teams. Why some teams win, why some teams lose.
completely agreed. All right, final prediction: who's going to the Super Bowl?
I'm going to say the Bengals, because I feel really good about them, that they can play anywhere, um, and they're not afraid to play
Right.
anywhere. And from the NFC, I'm going to go
Oh
49ers.
my God! Don't, no, we're not doing that again. We're not. For those of you who are not from Cincinnati, the Bengals have had 3 playoff appearances. The last one was last year, but before that, before we had a decade and a half of mediocrity to terribleness, we lost to the 49ers twice in the 80s in the Super
We
Bowl.
did
So
in the
that would
Super
be
Bowl.
super ironic if we came
But
back, especially if we beat them. That'd be awesome.
I just think, Philadelphia's had a great year. They have home field. Everybody feels good about Philadelphia, but the 49ers, they're just rolling on all cylinders right now. I think they're just going to be just a little bit too much for Philadelphia by the time it gets to the NFC Championship game. Plus, I think Jalen Hurts, the Eagles quarterback, he hurt his shoulder.
Mhm.
Missed the last game. Didn't look the same, or not the game before, but then he just played this past weekend, but he didn't look the same. Um, I think that's just going to be enough for the 49ers to win. So, um, you know, put it down on paper right now that the Attraction Group podcast predicts a Bengals 49ers Super Bowl.
Okay, and final score.
I don't. Oh gosh, I'll go Bengals 20. Bengals 24, 49ers 21.
That close, huh?
It'll be very
Was
close.
it
Yeah.
the 81 Super Bowl or 89 where the Bengals lost it in the last couple? I was really little back then. Not in 81.
Well, in 81, they had first down at like the 1 yard line,
Mhm.
and they tried the same play 4 straight times with Pete Johnson up the middle, and he couldn't get in.
Oh god.
The last one, on the fourth one, a wide receiver named David Verser was their first round pick this year, but because of the noise level in the Detroit Superdome, he couldn't hear that Ken Anderson had audible to a different play,
Mm,
and who that meant who he was supposed to pick up on a block. He couldn't hear that, so the guy just came right through and just tackled Pete Johnson. Didn't score. So they lost that one. If they scored there, they would have won that one. And then in the 1989 Super Bowl, very low scoring game. Neither team was on.
yeah.
With it just wasn't a good day for either team's offense. Not the defenses were playing great, but just not a good game. Bengals take the lead. Stanford Jennings takes the second half kick off the distance. Um, the Bengals punt the ball, fourth quarter, 3 minutes to go, under 3 minutes, and the kickoff returner kind of like fumbled the ball for a minute, and then the Bengals have it. They got to go like 89, 90 yards
Yeah.
to score. Joe Montana comes into the huddle. I knew that this is not good because Joe Montana was the comeback king from the time he played at Notre Dame. He was always bringing teams back from like 20 points.
Mhm.
Uh, I think the legend of Joe Montana was he brought his fifth grade team back, from 20 points down with 5 minutes to go in recess.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stories they were talking about with this guy. So it just, he just, nickel and dimed them all the way down the field. And then with 34 seconds left, they get the game winning touchdown. To John Taylor. To this day, I have not watched a replay of that game. I have a tape of it, but I refuse to watch it. It just whatever with that. But I was hoping last year, uh, after the Bengals, beat the Chiefs, that night it was the Rams and the
Mm.
49ers, and I was hoping the 49ers would win because I thought third time's the
Yep,
charm.
greatness versus
That was
redemption, right? Well,
That's right. That's right. But no, I think I mean if any of those teams that are in there, can win. I mean, um, there's those teams are all in the playoffs for a
right.
reason. And all it takes is just like an injury to somebody or a turnover, interception, a fumble, a block kick,
A
anything
pass
like that.
interference call, stupid NFL rules.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly, exactly. I mean, it's a different game, so officiating becomes part of the game.
And it gets
Unfortunately,
harder and harder to do. Well, I don't
it
think it's gotten
does.
harder to, well, I think it has because the rules have been more complicated, but I think that now that Ryan sitting at home watching the game has access to instant replay, like as somebody who's sitting there even with like a modest knowledge of the deep technical
Yeah,
rules, I can see no, he was actually in. Or but maybe they can't see that. I mean, obviously they have their challenges or whatever, but you don't always
yeah.
do that.
But I mean, it's a subjective. I mean, on any play in the NFL, just about any play in the NFL, you can call holding on a lineman.
Oh yeah.
You can call holding on a defensive back. Or something like that they've grabbed a guy coming off the line. I mean, any of the so basically on every play in the NFL, you can call a penalty for something. So it really comes down to that too, the officiating. Some call didn't go, went against you, pass interference, whatever, and put the team in range to get the field goal that you won by 3 or
Yeah.
something. So who knows? I mean, it's just so many other things that are involved than just your team itself. So that's the fun about the playoffs too. I mean, it's you just don't know. I mean, you basically you get into this point, everybody's 0-0, and um, you just see what happens. It's not always the best team or the team with the best record, and that's in all different sports. I mean, it happens in hockey, it happens in
Mhm.
basketball, it happens in baseball. Dodgers, win 111 games or whatever. They get knocked out. They don't get to the World Series. So I mean, it's just something goes, and when it's one and win or go home, it's who knows.
Exactly.
So many elements. But Ryan, this was a fun
Yeah, I was
podcast,
worried
and
about filling up an hour. We're at an hour and 20 minutes, so you sure can ramble about them Bengals. Um,
yeah, or the NFL. The
well,
NFL,
the
that's
NFL, yeah,
that's
but obviously, the passion lies with the Bengals for the most part. But yeah, great conversation. Thanks for sticking with us for whoever did for us to talk about the NFL, even if you're not particularly interested in that and you want to hear about roller coasters and stuff. But Don, any final words of advice about the NFL, the amusement industry, life in general?
I think, like we talked about earlier, if you are interested in one day working in the amusement park industry as a career, now is the time to go online, look at the parks, that are in your area, and apply. You can't get the job unless you try. So, and if you're going to interview, there's a lot of people that are interested in that same position that you are. So you want to bring your A game to the interview. You're competing with a lot of other people for that same position. Give it your best shot, and once you get in, be a sponge, absorb as much information as you can. And who knows? One day you're a director of a department, or maybe even a GM one day. So just just give it a shot.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, everyone, thanks for listening. We're gonna have a pretty awesome episode next week too. Not gonna say who's gonna be on it because, for one, we want it to be a surprise, and for two, things change, so I don't want to set expectations. Um, Remember to follow us at on Twitter at attractions_GRP. Look for us on your favorite podcast apps. I just learned Apple Motion, so I've been making these motion graphics for us. So please watch the YouTube. It's pretty cool. I want you to see it. But we'll see you next week, everyone. Thanks again for listening.